Though 3 men dwell on Flannan Isle to keep the lamp alight, as we steered under the lee, we caught no glimmer through the night. Aye, though we hunted high and low, and hunted everywhere, of the 3 men's fate we found no trace, of any kind in any place, but a door ajar, and an untouched meal, and an overtoppled chair. The Flannan Isles Lighthouse was operational for a little over a year when the keepers disappeared. 21 miles west of the Isle of Lewis, the Flannan Isles are sometimes known as the Seven Hunters. The lighthouse is situated on the largest of the island group on the 38-acre Eilean Moor, Big Island, designed by David Allen Stevenson, son of David Stevenson. It sits on a 200-foot cliff, a 75-foot tall white tower. The beacon has a range of 20 miles and flashes 2 white signals every 30 seconds. Approval for the construction of a lighthouse on the Flannan Isles was received from the Board of Trade in 1896, but it wasn't until the 7th of December 1899 that work began. Built by George Lawson of Rutherglen between 1896 to 1899, he constructed the lighthouse as well as the landing places and stairs on the island and the houses for the lightkeepers' families at the shore station at Bresklet on Lewis. During the lighthouse's operation, fortnightly reliefs were carried out until the disaster of December 1900. Prior to the discovery that the men were missing, the light had not been seen on the islands from the nearest point on Lewis, 16 miles away, for 10 days. At the time, 3 lightkeepers were on duty at the lighthouse: James Ducat, principal lightkeeper, Thomas Marshall, assistant lightkeeper, and Donald MacArthur, occasional keeper, who was on duty for William Ross, assistant lightkeeper, who was absent on sick leave. One other assistant lightkeeper, Joseph Moore, was on shore duty on Bresklet. James Ducat was born on the 11th of August 1856 to James Ducat, ploughman, and Louisa Ducat, née Guild. He had entered the service of the Commissioners of Northern Lighthouses on the 21st of November 1878 at 22 years old, and had served in a number of different lighthouses. His longest duration was at Rance of Islay Lighthouse for 7 years and 9 months, and by the time he reached the Flannan Isles, he had been promoted in April 1896 from assistant lightkeeper to principal. James married Mary Grierson on the 9th of June 1882 at Hutton Place, Edinburgh. Although James does not appear to be descended from lightkeepers, Mary certainly was, with both her father John and Uncle Robert working at different lights. Tracing her through the census records in 1881, a year before her marriage, she was living with her Uncle Robert Grierson at number 1 Inchkeith Light, and James Ducat was living at number 2 with his sister and niece. It seems likely that this is where they met and came together before marrying in 1882. Thomas Marshall was the assistant lightkeeper and had entered the service of the NLC on the 27th of April 1896 at 27 years old. His entry in the lightkeepers' registers note that he was previously a seaman and occasional lightkeeper when resident on Ailsa Craig. Donald MacArthur, as an occasional keeper, was not recorded in the registers. The Disappearance, a steamer passing the lighthouse around midnight on the 15th of December, noted that the light was not lit and reported this when they arrived at port. However, this fact was not communicated to the commissioners, and the disappearance of the keepers was only discovered as a result of the routine visit by the lighthouse tender Hesperus on the 26th of December, 1900. Captain Harvey was in command of the Hesperus. He reported that there was no sign of life to be seen on the island, and no response was made to either the horn being sounded or to a rocket fired from the ship. The relieving keeper, Joseph Moore, was landed to investigate, but upon entering the lighthouse, found no one there. Moore reported these facts to the master and was returned to the island with Mr. MacDonald, boy master, who was on board the vessel at the time, and Seaman Lamont and Campbell, all three having volunteered to remain on the island with Moore to ensure the light was kept in operation. Further investigation ensued, and it was confirmed that Moore had found the station deserted, with lamps trimmed and ready, the lens and machinery cleaned, the kitchen tidied, and 2 sets of outdoor clothing missing. No trace of the men was discovered. From the archives in the National Records of Scotland, NRS, we can trace the correspondence detailing the investigation of the men's disappearance, with letters written to the commissioners by Joseph Moore, and a report submitted by the Superintendent Robert Muirhead on the 8th of January, 1901. From these, we know that the last entries in the keeper's log were for the 13th of December, but particulars for the 14th of December, and the time of extinguishing the light on the 15th of December, along with barometer and thermometer readings, and the wind conditions at 9 a.m. on the 15th, were all noted on a slate for transferring to the log later. Everything was in order. The lamp was cleaned, the fountain full, blinds on the windows, etc., and clear evidence of the work of the forenoon on the 15th having been completed, all of which suggests the men disappeared on the afternoon of Saturday, the 15th of December. While no evidence of the men was found, traces of bad weather were present. Robert Muirhead's report notes, the iron railings round the crane platform and from the terminus of the tramway to the concrete steps up from the west landing were displaced and twisted. A large block of stone weighing upwards of 20 hundredweight had been dislodged from its position higher up and carried down to and left on the concrete path. A life buoy fastened to the railings along this path to be used in case of emergency had disappeared, and I thought at first that it had been removed for the purpose of being used, but it was evident that the force of the sea pouring through the railings had, even at this great height, 110 feet above sea level, torn the life buoy off the ropes. It was concluded that the men must have left the lighthouse for some purpose in this weather, perhaps to secure some gear or to ascertain what damage had been done. With Moore's knowledge of the lightkeepers' working clothes, Muirhead could guess that they had made their way to the landings. When the accident occurred, Ducat was wearing sea boots and a waterproof, Marshall sea boots and oilskins, and as Moore assures me that the men only wore those articles when going down to the landings, they must have intended, when they left the station, either to go down to the landings or the proximity of it. The conclusion of the investigation suggests that the men had been caught by an unexpected large roller wave and swept into the sea. Four volumes from the Lightkeeper Register of the Commissioners of Northern Lighthouse, spanning a total of 84 years, 1837 to 1921, were recently imaged and made available on the National Records of Scotland's Service, Scotland's People. These registers are indexed and can be searched by name age, and the year an individual entered into service. The register entries for Ducat and Marshall include a note in red ink, disappeared on or about the 15th of December 1900, and all three men are recorded in the register of deaths for the district of Carloway on the same page, with the cause of death noted as probably drowning. Keeper James Ducat was survived by his wife and 4 children, Louisa, 16, Robert, 13, Annabella, 9, and Arthur, 6. Thomas Marshall was unmarried and had no children, but was survived by his father, brother, and sister. The correspondence records suggest that Donald MacArthur was survived by his wife and 2 children, who are yet to be definitively identified in our records. There have been many books written about and inspired by the disappearance of the Flannan Isles Lightkeepers, with the film The Vanishing released in 2018 based on the story. While it is likely that the mystery behind the keeper's disappearance will continue to fascinate, it is worth remembering that 3 keepers lost their lives in pursuit of their duty, and the families of these men, to this day, do not know for sure what happened